It is Monday, January 17th, 2022, the year of our Lord. And of course, we have to remind everybody that this is Martin Luther King Day. And certainly in the age of fighting over critical race theory, his message, as far as I'm concerned, is all the more relevant. That could be a discussion for another time. Well, I'll tell you, last week has been quite the set of events. So, in Greenwich, that's right, we had a revolution, a downright bloodless revolution. That's what was appreciated. Okay, so quickly, the backdrop to this is, starting in June, you had Jackie Homan, all right, starting to, quote, stir the pot as far as the Board of Education was concerned, when she placed on the every chair in the Greenwich Republican Town Committee at the time, porn that was part of the curriculum in Greenwich High School, and I think the middle school too. She got quite the reaction, and quite a few parents quickly joined her group, Greenwich Patriots. And from there the fight began. All these new plants sprouting up, you know, are born of the same soil and the same concern, and that is that you have a school system and a Board of Education that, just to put it in the simplest possible terms, won't listen at all. At all. People just got more fed up and disgusted with each passing month. So should we be surprised, by the time we got around to January, you had a large group of surly people ready for change, okay? So it was conducted as a stealth campaign, but we'll put simply, the ones who are in power didn't see it coming by any means. Just to cut to the chase, at the end of these 2 days, you now had conservatives with 2/3 control of the Greenwich Republican Town Committee. As a point of history, okay, there's been a struggle between conservatives and moderates within the Greenwich Republican Committee, or town party, for quite some time. So this represents an important change. Now, just as an interesting sidebar, I want to throw in that the soon-to-be former chairman, Dan Quigley, who certainly showed that he knew how not to listen to his base, in the meeting, one of the meetings where the votes was going on, I think it was for District 11, he was on the cell phone, that's right, in a shouting match with Ed Didakis. Now, anybody who knows this group, we think of Ed Didakis as the enforcer. And he was, shall we say, disappointed that Dan Quigley, quote, lost control of the situation. Well, there will be ramifications. There's more coming. As far as the formal proceedings of the town committee itself, there's a series of steps. It started in March, and it'll rapidly go from there. And I want to believe it's a new day. I really do. I worry that they will have trouble with teamwork, but I got to believe they could do it.
They're here.
All right. So I'm sure we'll be having more on this, and you'll keep an eye out for a link to a series of articles I'm going to have as well. All right. Number 2, fighting erosions of liberty. Let's see. This was inspired by, it's a Daily UK article. Now, this article was basically picking up on the fact that if you look at different aspects like gun rights, taxes, regulation in general, and other things, that you can see how in various states you don't have as many rights as you do in others. So the worst offenders are Hawaii, California, and New York. The better states to live in, the ones that are considered more free, are like Nevada and New Hampshire. Idaho. And all of this is good to know, but quite frankly, this is a superficial look at the problem. That the issue of the erosions of our liberties has been going on is a key issue, and it's one that we're going to hear about here more in Connecticut. And I'm going to say Greenwich is going to be the home of the Liberty Revolution. I'm just saying. But we're going to touch on some other things here that relate to this. So moving on. All right, item number 3. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, the supply chain in your refrigerator. Yes, the way to think about this, right, is you get these news accounts about issues with the supply chain, And it's always the same story, right? Supply chains are broken. We're having trouble delivering things. The ships are clogging the ports. And people are having to do other things. It's all out of control. It's just terrible. And then you have the reports about, like Walmart saying, we're so embarrassed. We apologize because we have so many empty shelves. You had a guy who worked for Walmart and said, this is like it used to be in the Soviet Union. But it's come to America. We should be thrilled. So this article just raises some interesting points, things to look out for, okay? It's 13 points. I will go through them very quickly. A shortage of processed potatoes, more turkey than usual, which is considered a last-line protein, a noticeable increase in citrus products, a sparse distribution of foodstuffs that rely on flavorings, the absence of non-seasonal products, little to no price difference on the organic comparables, unusual country of origin for fresh product type. So you thought you're getting your blueberries from Chile, but all of a sudden what? Blueberries from Easter Island? How's that even possible? Anyway, absence of large container products, shortage of any but specific grain derivatives like wheat crackers, big brand shortages, shortages of wet pet food, okay? Last one, a shortage of milk products and or ancillaries. Now I have to say, I go to a place in Clinton, Connecticut called Big Y. I'll use Whole Foods in Greenwich and there's one other. And I have to say, I haven't seen much or any of this, but other people seem to be experiencing it. Now, in this article, just a last point here, which I thought was interesting, is that our whole food supply, storage, shipping system works on a very basic principle, which is to stay essentially one harvest ahead of demand by storing it. And then the other food manufacturers who make processed products will draw from these stores. Now, the concern, of course, is that these stores are going to become stressed, and then we're going to see problems with some of the other products that would normally be made there. All right, so there's that. Number 4, oh yes, Commie of the Week. Bring up the music. Commie of the Week. Yes, this week we have Mr. Ben McManus. All right? Now, Mr. McManus, as it turns out, works in an HR department at Yale University. And if any place is a hotbed for communism, that's right, Yale University. All you folks at Yale, stay tuned. We will be getting to you. So, what's interesting about Mr. McManus is that he would have stood there a few weeks ago and shaken the hand of Senator Blumenthal and State Senator Julie Kushner for being the 2021 recipient of the Amistad Awards. Remember, it was the Amistad Award dinner that had them as guests. And so they would have stood there and said, thank you, Mr. McManus, for your wonderful service as a burgeoning communist. We appreciate it. So, and he got the anniversary last year, too. Now, there's more to say on this guy. I mean, in this one, we've got a live one, all right? So, as with so many of these people who are pretending to be concerned citizens, they come in as part of the, quote, labor movement, all right? So that could be the SEIU, that could be anything. And it's always the talk about, rights for workers, etc. But all you got to do is scratch the surface a little bit, and you'll find the communist thug quite alive underneath. So anyway, that's to be continued. Next, all right, Governor LaMont wants Connecticut legislature to take a stance on masks and mandates. As he says, here's your opportunity. Well, I'm sorry, Tyrant LaMont. We know who these people are. They're your thugs. But you know what? There's a little problem. If you want legislation to replace your emergency use your emergency powers, citizens are going to demand something. It's called evidence. Ever heard of it? Okay? It blows my mind that you have someone like Brownstone Institute producing a study with 400 studies showing how masks and social distancing do not work. 400 studies. Nobody pays attention. Everybody ignores it. They pretend it doesn't exist. Oh, but now you want them to codify this crap. Okay, we're going to demand hearings. We're going to demand evidence. We're going to demand real debates on this as we bring this back to a real democracy. God forbid that you get another extension. Jesus.
No.
Anyway, The other fun part here. Okay, LaMont faces tough questions as the election season approaches, as do his potential Republican opponents. We're not going to talk about his opponents. We're just not. However, let's just focus on two. Remember, tyrants do stupid things. All right? Just wanted to remind you, and I will keep reminding you that tyrants do stupid things. In this case, of course, the way they mismanage the kits. And as the person put it, they were trying to make excuses because the kits didn't show up. The kits were stuck in the warehouse, the runway, the plane, depending on the day or the hour, okay? So they clearly did not have, quote, control of the situation. And this is so typical of any government that is run as a tyranny. It is the same story. A small number of people who think they know what they're doing, and all they can do is screw it up. Meantime, the other problem, people forget, there was a little Christmas party that Tyrant LaMont threw. No masks, people got sick, I don't know. Yeah. All right, this one's priceless. So priceless, I got to show you the title. All right. Pennsylvania election official admits to breaking election law. Yes, so we got the link up there, so you don't want to miss it. It's only a 28-second video, but in those 28 seconds, yes, she makes the confession that they did break the law in several ways. All right, now this is a little bit more involved, so I want to get through this. Okay, more of a think piece. Decoding the Tyranny of the Administrative State. Now, many people don't think about this thing called the administrative state, but we really do. You think of bureaucrats and agencies, and boy, is that boring. But the fact of the matter is that they're the ones who have sucked up all the power, and they continue to suck up more power at the state level as well as the federal level. And this is, as far as I'm concerned, this is where our real fight is. How we get through to these people and straighten them out, it's a big concern. But so just quickly, the issue here is, to use a phrase, is that we're fighting centralized, oligarchic statism. All right? A bunch of people who think this is how you do things and we don't need to know anything else. And then there's just this quote I want to read. Okay, so this gentleman, his name, by the way, is Professor of Law Philip Hamburger at Columbia University. You'd be surprised, but there you go. So he recently published a book called Purchasing Submission in his effort to show another way that the U.S. Constitution is diminished and liberty suffers. Purchase of submission by means of government distribution of benefits, rewards to private entities, citizens, businesses, lesser government entities from the state on down, so that the government can expand its power. Okay, that's it in its essence. And you should be very concerned every time you hear them say, oh, we have a wonderful public-private partnership here. Okay? That's the part where you start to scream a little bit louder. These so-called public-private partnerships are nothing more than the government, private resources taking advantage of government regulation so that they can get away with murder at your expense. Okay? So anyway, to be followed up on. Now this one, just briefly, it's another one. I thought this was very interesting. It's about, the title is Calculating the Full Costs of Electrifying Everything Using Only Wind, Solar, and Batteries. And what we have is there's some people who are experts out there doing their analysis, collecting data, developing their own models, and then coming to their own conclusions about what it would really cost to make everything running on wind, solar, and batteries. One of the first, so there's this, one of them, it's a study called Levelized Cost of Energy. Don't you love that? Levelized. Makes it sound like it's fair and balanced. The same old crap we have to read through time and again. So just to cut through the crap and pull out the best part, the argument by other people who have done this analysis is that complete conversion of our whole economy in order to have it completely electrified and running on wind, solar, and storage, yes, $433 trillion. Okay? Our national GDP, I got that right, is 21 billion. Okay? So you can do the math. To say ruinous doesn't even begin to describe what the Green New Deal people want to do. And the other thing that's not discussed here, of course, all this stuff that they want to do, there are some carbon materials that will still be required. Let me try one. I don't know, tires. That cars need tires. Tires are made of carbon. So, I mean, how are you going to get rid of them? You're not. Last is the most troubling here. How much time have I got, Eric? 1 minute. All right, make it quick. All right, well, I'll just read quickly. This is a 5-minute reading by Dr. Robert W. Malone, in which he makes clear that there's something bigger that makes no sense. I'll just read a few lines quickly. Our government is out of control, and they are lawless. They completely disregard bioethics, and here's the most important part. They completely disregard what is called the Federal Common Rule. Now, if you look up the Federal Common Rule, it's about, shall we say, federal guidelines for running clinical trials. Right? So this would be kith and kin, right, to informed consent. But the Common Rule is, I would say, more bureaucratic in nature, and it's supposed to define in clear terms what the standards are for whether or not people will be subjected to clinical trials. Anyway, this goes on.
Informed consent.
Yes, yes, informed consent is all part of this. So, but it's a remarkable piece. And now we do have some late entries here. Yes. Now, with Project Veritas, they came out with this Department of Defense or DARPA document basically showing that Fauci had really lied as far as using Wuhan laboratory for gain-of-function research. I just have to throw in my own editorial comment on this quickly. I've read through the document several times, and there are problems with it, okay? I don't want to say that it's not authentic, but maybe I'll do a separate thing on it. There's, Robert Malone has basically said, it's authentic. He has more experience with the government than I do. But when you read it, there are things that just don't ring true. And one person made the observation that the reason this document was even written in the first place, and the way they did it in August, was because they can see what's coming down the road. They know that pardon my French, the shit's going to hit the fan, so they're just trying to cover their asses. Now, when you begin to read this document from that perspective, it begins to make sense. And so it just makes it all the more peculiar. The last thing I want to bring up, because this is the proverbial monkey wrench, ladies and gentlemen, the proverbial monkey wrench. A French insurer has refused to pay the death claim for a certain French billionaire who died of COVID. Are you ready for why they refused to pay? You're going to love it. They said this gentleman had available to him all this information on what was wrong with the COVID vaccine, and he chose to ignore it. So we're not paying his death benefit. Is that awesome, or is that awesome? If there's anything I'm waiting to see come to America, that's it. But I will finish with another French one, the French maid. Yes. Seems that there was a French maid who was being a little too careful, and she accidentally unplugged a refrigerator that contained over 1,000 vials of Pfizer vaccine. All ruined, all had to be thrown out. What a shame, what a shame. All right, until next week, it's been great. So long.
So where is the French maid?
Jeez, the French, right. So, most